I've got good news and bad news. The good news, divorces are at their lowest rate in 50 years. The bad news, marriage is at its lowest point in 150 years. For the Colson Center, I'm John Stonestreet. This is Breakpoint. According to a new report by the National Center for Health Statistics, marriage in the U.S. has never been less popular. Today in the U.S., there's only 6.5 weddings for every 1,000 people. That's the lowest rate since we started keeping records just after the Civil War. And despite the fact that millennials, who are the biggest generation in American history, are now at their peak marriage years. And these numbers are pre-COVID-19. As the report's lead author suggests, the economic fallout of this virus will likely, quote, further discourage marriage in the near term. Of course, economic factors do affect marriage rates. Even before COVID closed everything down, single breadwinners could find it quite difficult to support a growing family. And in recent decades, the marriage gap, that's the different marriage rates between upper and lower income Americans, has become only more pronounced, with marriage becoming more and more the luxury of the wealthy. At the same time, it's a worldview mistake to think that economics alone can explain what's happening to marriage. As Bradford Wilcox with the Institute for Family Studies reminds us, there was no marked increase in divorce, family instability, or single parenthood at the height of the Great Depression. And by contrast, Cornell sociologist Daniel Lichter points out, some of the biggest drops in marriage rates, at least in recent years, have occurred during economically prosperous times. Look, the bigger factor here is not money, it's culture. Exhibit A, as marriage has receded, cohabitation, living together, has both increased in number and in social acceptability. Pew Research reports that a quarter of unmarried young adults are living with a partner. That's the highest percentage since our record-keeping began. The rise of cohabitation has followed not only a shift of attitudes about out-of-wedlock sex, but about the institution of marriage itself. Several years ago, another Pew study found more than half of young people in America thought marriage was, quote, obsolete. As one pastor remarked on Facebook, young people who pursue the necessary skills for marriage today are often treated as if they're wasting their real potential. Those who get married in their early or even mid-20s, well, they can inspire a level of shock and shame that was once reserved for those couples living in sin. Even worse, our culture's current portrayal of the good life often involves career-minded singles living in hip urban apartments, sowing their wild oats through casual dating and hookup apps, and leading lives incompatible with a spouse, much less children. But the road to rebuilding a culture that values marriage will be long and arduous. But we do have some clues about what works when it comes to creating and then preserving that kind of culture. The Institute for Family Studies reports that, contrary to a popular but mistaken talking point, the institution that remains the single best refuge for marriage is the church. It is still true, even today, that among the surest predictors a couple will get and then stay married is how regularly they attend religious services. That's why bringing people to God and bringing people together so often come as a package deal. Even so, the church simply must first embrace her God-given task of re-catechizing his people about what marriage is. Too often, the church is trying to put a Band-Aid of sexual morality onto a gaping wound of bad Christian thinking. That's bad Christian thinking about marriage in ways no different than the larger culture. That marriage is either a lifestyle accessory, a waste of youth, or an institution about personal happiness. We won't know what marriage is or how to do it unless we know what God created marriage for. Hint, though companionship is certainly a wonderful side benefit of a healthy marriage, God did not create marriage to solve Adam's loneliness problem. Check the text again. He created marriage to solve Adam's aloneness problem. It's a very important distinction that not only explains what marriage is for, but sets the groundwork for all of the moral expectations that God gives us about sex and marriage. Even after the wedding, by the way, the church is still the best place to strengthen marriage, a necessary task if we're going to see the kind of culture where people think of lifelong married love as part of the good life. Recently, J.P. DeGance joined me on the Breakpoint podcast to talk about a unique data-driven approach that helps pastors identify struggling marriages and then works to help save them in their communities. Working with pastors and churches in Jacksonville, Florida, for example, DeGance's organization, Communio, saw the divorce rate drop 24% in 3 years. That's many times faster than the national average. And saving existing marriages is an essential part of encouraging new ones. After all, how many young people are out there who've never seen a single marriage work? How can we expect them to trust an institution that, in their view, not only consistently fails, but causes so much pain and heartbreak when it does? J.P. DeGance will be joining Katie Faust, Pastor Bob Fu, and Student for Life founder and president Kristen Hawkins for Module 5 of our upcoming Truth, Love Together virtual event. He'll be talking about how the church can help restore a marriage culture. The Truth, Love Together event is absolutely free. Come to wilberforceweekend.org to sign up. That's wilberforceweekend.org. For Breakpoint, I'm John Stonestreet.